it's reality of life.
All right. So we're continuing on in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Oh boy, anybody know what page that we're on? We're in the chapter Advice to Ishan. We're probably about 2 or 3 pages from the end. We've just finished singing a bunch of songs to the Divine Mother, and Ramakrishna, the last we left him, was telling us how important it is for us to assimilate the things that we know, right? And assimilate means to take them out of the mind and put them into your life. To have when you hear a word, when you heard it said that you will never die, then you should live as if you're immortal. That's assimilating it. When you hear that God alone is real, then you should be less bothered by the conditions of things and find a great joy in that reality. To bring that into your life and live accordingly. When you're told that you're made of pure love, and you feel the mind getting angry, it's a good time to assimilate that I am of the nature of pure love, right? And when all of those other vices come in that come with egoism, it's always good to remember I am not the mind, I'm not the body, and so to be less concerned about those things. So to assimilate these truths so that we can be changed, we can be transcendent in the way that we live. That the world can see what love is by looking at the life that we're living. That is how we know that we are assimilating these teachings. Vivekananda says that. Those two questions, right? Are you loving and are you unselfish? Those are the only two questions that you need to ask if you want to know how spiritual you are. To the degree that you can say yes to those two sentences, to that degree, you are spiritual. So he continues on. The master rose. He mounted the platform in front of the shrine and saluted the mother, touching the ground with his forehead. The devotees quickly gathered around him and fell at his feet. They all begged his grace. He descended from the platform and started toward his room, conversing with M. But first he sang. I bow my head, says Ram Prasad, before desire and liberation. Knowing the secret that Kali is one with the highest Brahman, I have discarded once for all both dharma and adharma. All right, so this is the first thing Ramakrishna is singing after he's come out of the shrine and the devotees are bowing at his feet and begging for grace because he's been in that spiritual mood and has been speaking these spiritual truths in their presence while in that deep state of samadhi several times, and then in that state of bhav, or pure love of God, as he was teaching. So I bow my head before desire and liberation. I salute both of them, desire, which keeps me bound, and liberation, which is my freedom. I salute them both equally. Why? Because I know the secret that Kali is one with the highest Brahman. I know that all action and all absolute inaction are the same, that they are all divine, right? And I have discarded once for all both dharma and adharma, righteous living and unrighteous living. That this knowledge of good and evil, right? Isn't that what this is? Adharma and dharma, the knowledge of good and evil, which is what we earned for ourselves when we ate of the tree of egoism in that Garden of Eden from the Christian stories. And so now we discard them both, coming to know that all things are divine, right? But this is a very high state. That's why he's saying this directly after he's telling us we have to assimilate these things into our life, right? Because if you take this one and try to assimilate it without doing the work, it's not going to go well for you. You can't throw away good and evil until you see the unity, right? Until you experience the unity of it. If you try and do it earlier, you're going to become an egotistical mess, actually, thinking that you've got lots of license because there is no good or evil and you are that one without a second. You'll make huge mistakes because it's not the you that is one with Brahman, not the you that you think it is. It's the you of your being, but not the you of your egoism, not the you with a name on it. right? That you disappears, that you comes untied for this oneness to be achieved, for this oneness to be realized. The master continued, "Do you know the meaning of dharma and adharma? Here, dharma means religious acts enjoined by the scriptures, such as charity, faith, feeding the poor, and the like. The performance of this dharma is called the path of karma. It is an extremely difficult path. It is very hard to act without motive. Therefore, one is asked to pursue the path of devotion." So, this path of dharma, the path of karma yoga, it's being purely in the moment. It's really the practice of discarding the past and the future and doing what you're doing without any motive, but doing it as an act of worship to whatever it is that you're doing. And Ramakrishna says it is an extremely difficult path because it is almost impossible to do things without motive, right? To do things without your eyes being set on the result. And if you do things with your eyes set on the result, then you get entangled in the karma of those things. You start to believe in a past and a future, and they begin to limit your options of who you are and how you act, and you get trapped into that wheel of suffering, right? The performance of this dharma is called the path of karma. It's an extremely difficult path. It is very hard to act without motive. Therefore, one is asked to pursue the path of devotion or bhakti yoga, right? Because the path of devotion is much easier. Love is both the goal and the path as you go forward. And falling in love is what brings us to our unity. And so these strict, ideal level requirements of purity are not as necessary in the path of bhakti, right? And so, in order for you to maintain the purity of mind necessary for karma yoga, or the purity of heart necessary for jnana yoga, where you have to basically remove all of your sense of separateness from reality, and all of your motivation and all of your thinking that involves time, space, causation, in order to hit that high note and sustain it, requires the life of a hermit, really, going off into the mountains and doing those practices in a cave, so that when you attain those moments of realization, there's nothing around to drag your mind back down into human existence. And so that's why he's saying the path of bhakti yoga is the proper one for this day and age, because everything is trying to pull us into body mind everywhere all the time. And so the only path that can really forge its way through that kind of obstacle is the path of love for God, because then that allows you to spiritualize everything, right? It allows you to do your work out of love for your beloved. It allows you to see your divine beloved in the eyes of others. So you can accept this duality and you can live within this duality. And by choosing to see it as your relationship with the beloved, then the duality itself becomes your help. So that's why love is both the path and the goal, right? That love that you begin developing for your divine beloved is then practiced toward each other, because you know that it is the divine beloved acting through everyone, and growing in the plants and providing the sun and all of the right now the rain for things to grow. And so this is why the path of love is really recommended. You can do whatever you want. Just always remember, choices come with a price tag. So make sure that really is what you want. You might be able to get rid of the pesky problem of God with the path of jnana or something like that, but you might not want to do that. There might be something about the divine or about the word God that you have not included in your definition. There might be something there that makes it worthwhile that you don't yet know about this divine, right? It may not be a person in the sky. It may not be a Santa Claus conditioning of what you do, naughty or nice. It may be something like the existence that you enjoy and the love that inspires you may be the presence of God. And if we start using the word love instead of the word God, it would alleviate a lot of our problems. To ask, do you believe in love, is an absurd question. Of course. Not only do we believe in it, but we pursue it. We sing of it. We dance to it. We write poetry about it. We write novels about it. We laud it in everything, right? And so if you understand that God is love, then you see that there's not a single person in this world that doesn't worship God. You see that everybody in this world is on a spiritual path because everybody is pursuing love and everybody wants to be loved and everybody believes in love, right? And so this is a healthy way of seeing the world around us. It takes away these ridiculous boundaries and judgment lines that we've laid down when we're acting as egos. Right. And so to remember that your belief in God is not a dogma or a doctrine. It's a trust in love as being the one most important thing in the universe. And if you look at that and understand that everybody's pursuit of love is their life, is behind actually everything that we do. Vivekananda makes that point that love is the single and only motivating force in the universe. So everything is done for the sake of love. That's what pushes us forward. Now, ego causes us to distort what that love is for. We start using it to love money. We start using it to love sex. We start using it to love cars and houses and whatnot like that. But nonetheless, all of those things are being motivated by love. And so religion becomes the exercise of trying to see the love that you have for all of these things and gathering that love together and making one offering of it to the universe as a singularity, as a beloved, right? And to live in that love and to increase that love and to expand that love. So this is what he's putting in front of us, right? Therefore, one is asked to pursue this path of devotion. A man was performing the faith or Shraddha ceremony at his house. That usually happens around the time of someone's death. He was feeding many people, and just then a butcher passed, leading a cow to the slaughter. He could not control the animal and became exhausted. He said to himself, well, let me go into that house and enjoy the feast of the Shraddha ceremony and strengthen my body. Then I will be able to drag this cow along. So he carried out his intention. But when he killed the cow, the sin of the slaughter fell also on the performer of the Shraddha. That is why I say the path of devotion is better than the path of action, right? So it's very hard to keep proper track of karmas and where they belong and who gets them, right? And plus, karma makes you have to keep track of those kinds of things, whereas love allows you to lay all of that stuff down and work on that, which is the one most important thing. Building up love, right? The master entered his room accompanied by M. He was humming a song. The forceful words of renunciation that he had just spoken to Ishan found expression through its words. He sang the lines, Mother, take everything else away from me, but leave me my necklace of bones and my pot of hemp. Those are the two things I'm taking with me if the place burns down. My bone necklace and my pot of hemp, which would be difficult to find, but right, these things. And what is the significance of that? Why take everything away from me, right? I need nothing else except my necklace of bones. What is that? My knowledge that I'm not the body, that the body will end. This world is temporary. To find that one thing within myself that does not change. That's what the necklace of bones represents, this knowledge. I'm decorated by my knowledge that I am not the body and the mind. I am not that this world, everything in this world changes, but I am the one unchanging thing. Right? And my pot of hemp, what is that? Your pot of hemp is your practice. Right? In ancient times and even in modern times. Of course, the order doesn't outright endorse it, because it's very hard to control. But hemp is traditionally used by wandering sadhus to calm the mind before meditation, right? Now, this is the old-fashioned hemp that doesn't throw you into all sorts of, you know, hallucinations with just a single hit of on the pipe. This is that old marijuana that you'd have to smoke a whole doobie to get high. So they just take one or two hits on it at most, just enough to calm the mind, Vivekananda says, and then they would sit and do their meditation for quite some time with that help. So these two things that he's holding on to, it is the knowledge of your nature and the practice that brought that maintains it and brought you there, that keeps that pure mind, right? And also representative of the intoxication of this divine knowledge, right? This being intoxicated by the oneness, by this pure love. Sri Ramakrishna sat down on the small couch, and Adhar, Kishori, and other devotees sat on the floor. Master to the devotees, I was noticing Ishan. Why, he hasn't achieved anything. What can be the reason? He practiced the Purushcharana for 5 months. That would have caused a revolution in any other person. Adhar, it wasn't wise of you to say those things to him in front of us. Master, how is that? He is so much given to japa. How can words affect him? Well, after a while, Sri Ramakrishna said to Adhar, Ishan is very charitable, and he practices japa and austerity a great deal. The master remained quiet a few moments. The eyes of the devotees were fixed on him. Suddenly, Sri Ramakrishna said to Adhar, you have both yoga and boga, right? What is that? Yoga and boga. Yoga is the spiritual practice, right? The love of God, the purification of the senses, the mind, and the heart. That's yoga. But boga is enjoyment, right? And so this is the problem in our life. If you're going along in your spiritual life and you're not experiencing anything, you're not having any joy, you're not having any moments of deep love that rush over you, whatever. I'm not talking about going into samadhi every day, but I'm just talking about touching things within that give you clues that you're going in the right direction, where your life is changing, that your self-control is getting stronger and that your love for people is becoming more natural and flowing more easily, right? That you're not finding yourself getting provoked as easily as you used to. These changes that should take place in us. And if they're not happening for you, then take a look at your life, because Ramakrishna says, this spiritual power practice where you accumulate spiritual energy, through your meditation and your self-control. If you haven't closed those gates, right, of enjoyment, then you just basically wash it out. That water, the water you're pouring into your bucket is coming out through the holes. And that's why it's not accumulating. And that's why you're sitting there 25 years into your spiritual life going, how come I'm not changing? How come none of this is working? Right? It's difficult because usually it's a very unpopular thing that's wrong with us. We have a split heart, usually. We have a love of some kind of enjoyment that we're not letting go of, that we've made room for in our life. We've talked our way around it, and we think that we're the special case, that for us it's all right because me and God, we're like this. But that's why Jesus says, if you love me, you will do what I say, right? And so that's how we show respect. I tell people who like to go to the temples and make offerings, it's like those offerings don't mean anything if you're not giving your heart. Those offerings don't mean anything if you're not giving your heart. Those kids that have a big exam, and go and offer a coconut and sugar at the temple so that they can pass their exam, it's like that's not how you worship the goddess of learning. You worship the goddess of learning by doing your homework and by studying your books for your exam, not by offering a coconut in the shrine the day before, right? We worship the goddess of learning by learning, by working hard at our studies. We worship the god of wealth, by working hard at our jobs and being men and women of integrity at work, right? So these proper worships for all of these deities, right? Because it goes through each one of these deities to the God of gods, to Brahman, right? And ultimately for our merging in that sense. So this is what Adhar's problem is, we see in the last sentence. He's done all of this work, right? But he's not changing. He's not transcending. And Ramakrishna is a little puzzled. How is this? Everybody else is doing this. This other guy's become so charitable because of his practice. But Adar is just kind of struggling along. And then he tells him, "You have both yoga and bhoga. This is what's crippling you. You're holding on to both worlds." And there's a warning in that actually. You know, if you do a lot of practice, like if you're somebody who's not letting go of the world, you're still trying to enjoy the world, and you're also trying to be very diligent in your practice. Um, Eventually, you're going to be forced into a situation of making a decision because those two boats that you've got your two different feet in are not going in the same direction. And if you start doing a lot of practice and you're not obeying the yamas and the niyamas, the do's and don'ts, uh, it can cause you to have a breakdown, right? It can cause you to have a breakdown because you've got your heart split and you're going in two directions intensely. And that's not going to work well for you. So pay attention to those yamas and niyamas, those dharma and adharma, right? Doing things that take you toward love and toward God, and to really renounce the things that enhance your belief that you're a body and that you're a mind, those things that take you into the multiplicity. All right, it's Saturday, October 18th, 1884. It was the day of the worship of Kali, the Divine Mother. The worship was to begin at 11 o'clock at night, and several devotees arrived at the temple. And this song is what they're singing here. It says, "All creation is the sport of my mad mother Kali." I love this idea. So all of creation, everything about this world is the play, right? It's the play of who? Not just mother as a child, mother as an insane woman, right? Letting mother out of the insane asylum for a day and letting her just run rampant and crazy in the world. Right? Why do we say that? Because we're going to see things happen in this creation that we can't understand, that we simply do not have the capability of knowing the whys and hows of it all, right? And so we're going to see God do things in a day that's like, what in the world does he have in mind with that? Right? And blowing up a volcano and taking out an entire island. And we're like, oh my God, why did that happen? Right? And we want to know all of these things. And so we make up ideas for them, usually terribly wrong ideas. But it's just this acceptance of it. All creation is the sport of my mad mother Kali. By her Maya, right? By this egoism that she has spread over all of us to make us think that we're separate and apart. By her Maya, the three worlds are bewitched, right? We're fooled into thinking we're a body mind, into thinking that we're born and that we die, into thinking that we want temporary things, right? That we enjoy this world. Mad is she, and mad is her husband, and mad are her two disciples. None can describe her loveliness, right? So she's mad. There's no doubt about it. Her husband is mad. God is mad, which just means beyond our understanding. We're not going to know why, the hows of all these things in this world, because his knowledge, he knows all of the variables. We hardly know even one variable, right? So we accept it. We understand that this is the nature of the world, right? But we look beyond it. We look through all of this change in the world, through all of this crazy dance of the world. We look to the divine itself. And when we see the divine itself behind all of this, we see a beauty that cannot be described. None can describe that loveliness. When you get past the tumult of the thought of your thoughts and of the conditions of your egoistic mind, and step first time into that garden of shrine behind the heart, here where the absolute dwells, that's where you find this stillness, right? None can describe her loveliness, her glories, her gestures and moods. Shiva, right? That's the shrine of the heart. Shiva, with the agony of the poison in his throat, right? He was swallowing all the poison for the whole world so that none of us have to die from this poison. So he swallows it, but he holds it in his throat. He doesn't accept it into his body, he holds it in his throat so that he doesn't die from it and none of us die from it. And so the world is saved. Shiva, with the agony of the poison in his throat, chants her name again and again. The personal does she oppose to the impersonal, breaking one stone with another. Right? So this personal data, this personal, what does that mean? This world of attributes, those things that you think make you special and separate, your body, your mind, its conditions, all of its attributes that make you, that you use to tell your story, really, in this great play. Right? This personal, she opposes this to the impersonal. What she wants to bring us to the realization of oneness. Right? And so she's using, this whole world is designed to bring you to realization. That is why life has so much suffering in it, right? Because if it didn't have suffering in it, we would get comfortable and we would just sit here and be like, lumps on a log. And so mother has to keep starting little fires to keep us moving, right? A little suffering so that we don't get content and get lost forever in this world of constant change. Chants her name and again. The personal does she oppose to the impersonal, breaking one stone with the other. That's the same as Ramakrishna's story about using one thorn to take out the other thorn, right? Breaking one stone upon the other. Though to all else she is agreeable, where duties are concerned, she will not yield. Right? The duties are the yamas and niyamas, those things that purify the mind of selfishness, of me and mine. Those things she will not compromise on, right? Everything else, right? Everything else, though to all else she is agreeable. You can practice how you want to practice. You can call her by the name you want to call her. You can pray the way you want to pray and dance the way you want to dance. But make sure that love is your primary goal, right? That unselfishness is the depth of your practice. Those are not optional. Right? Those are not optional. Where duties are concerned, she will not yield. Keep your raft, says Ram Prasad, afloat on the sea of life, drifting up with the flood tide and drifting down with the ebb. All right? So keep your raft. Keep your safety. What is your raft? Your raft is the name of God, your mantra, your practice, your constant steering toward that one without a second. That's your raft, and it's on this world and going up with the flood tide and down with the ebb. You know, we're going to be moved around. It's not going to be one way because we're practicing one way. Even if you're doing all the things right, there's going to be ups and downs because that's the nature of the world of change, right? But we stay on our raft and we keep our course. We don't get overwhelmed by the flood tide, by pushing us in and pushing us back. And we don't get concerned because we know the flood tides only come twice a day. And the rest of the time, we're steadily moving forward. And so in our practice, we don't worry about our wins and our losses. We just keep practicing. We just keep getting back on the horse. We keep trying again. We keep trying to do better. And we just giggle the whole way because ultimately it's grace that brings us home, right? The efforts are the flowers we get to pick to hand to mother, but they aren't what makes the difference at the finish line, right? What makes the difference at the finish line is when you stumble across that finish line and you see that it was mother under your right arm who carried you the last third of it by herself. That's the one most important realization, right? The master was quite overwhelmed with the song. He said that songs like these denoted a state of divine inebriation. He sang one after another. This time I shall devour thee utterly, Mother Kali, for I was born under an evil star, and one so born becomes, they say, the eater of his mother. Right? This is a song here. He's singing about this tamasic devotion, where you threaten God. You're like, you say you're my father. You say that you're the king and I'm an heir. Then give me my inheritance, right? It's not a begging. You accept that God is my king. You accept that I am his servant. You accept that you're an heir to these things. And you go and you take them with that boldness, with that singularity of mind. This is mine. I will have my realization. It belongs to me. It's not a little mealy mouth. Oh, please. Oh, please. Oh, let me have it. Oh, come on. Be nice to me. Right? He's saying, no, take God by the throat and let him have it, right? This is the wonderful thing about the divine in Ramakrishna's world. You know, you can save yourself by hating God because it's the thought of God that purifies you, right? We have that story of that Vaishnava, I think he was. He was a practitioner. He hated the idea of Shiva, of these other gods. For him, it was Krishna alone, and he was passing. He would always pass this little shrine in the woods that had a lingam on it, and every day he would pass off on his way to work. He'd veer off the path and go over and just to kick the Shiva lingam. That's all you do. He would just go over and kick the Shiva lingam, and then go back on the path and go to work. And he did that every day without fail. And when he died, he goes to heaven, and Shiva's there waiting for him. And the man is like, "What the heck? I kicked you every single day." And Shiva's like, "Yes, you thought of me every single day. You went out of your way to think of me every single day." And so, even though he was hating God the whole way, God, out of his love, saw that as a devotion to him from the other side, obviously, but still a dedicated act of constantly remembering God to abuse him properly. And so you see, that's the power of the name of God, the presence of God. It doesn't matter why you're there, if you're there to assassinate him or if you're there to worship him, being in that presence is going to purify you. It's going to bring you home. Then he sang another, O Kali, my mother, full of bliss, enchantress of the almighty Shiva. In your delirious joy you dance, clapping your hands together. This is that beautiful joy of spiritual practice. You know, I tell people, you read the gospel. I mean, if you read almost every page, there's laughter. Almost every page. And you see the way Ramakrishna, when he's in ecstasy, I mean, it's ecstasy for crying out loud. It's not mopestasy where he's moping and or sadstasy, right? It's ecstasy. He's totally thrilled with love and drunk with love. And that is that is what we are heirs to, that divine inebriation, that enjoyment of life. And so that's why I tell people, if you're not enjoying your practice, change it up a little bit. Something's missing. You're not thinking of love properly, or you haven't come to understand love properly, because the result of the presence is feeling deeply loved. The result of the presence is feeling deeply forgiven, deeply supported in your practice. It's knowing that even though you fail every day, at least twice a day, the only one that still believes in you is the Divine Mother, your divine beloved. That she will look at you straight faced and say, "Yes, I know you're sorry," even though she's heard you say you're sorry every day for doing the same thing over and over and over again, right? She's the one that believes. She's the one that honestly thinks, yes, this will be his last time and he's going to get it together and go forward, right? And so it's knowing that your mother herself is your clear conscience. And you sit in her presence with that knowledge and that confidence and that trust, that faith, that grace is enough for you, even for you. And that is the root of ecstasy. That is the root of your liberation, right? He goes on, if at the last, if at the last my life breath leaves me as I repeat the name of Kali, I shall attain the realm of Shiva. What does Benares mean to me? Right? He's saying it is the name of my beloved that saves me. It's grace, the presence of God, right within me. The fact that I'm made in that image, that is why I'm saved, right? So he says, if at my last life breath, as I'm dying, I can repeat the name of Kali, I will attain the realm of Shiva. I will get heaven, right? What does Benares mean to me, right? Because there's that old myth or well, myth or fact about Benares, that if you die in Benares, that you're liberated. You automatically go straight to liberation, to freedom, right? And we actually have a vision of Ramakrishna where he said while he was on a boat in the Ganges there in Benares, he saw at the cremation grounds, he saw Shiva going from corpse to corpse and whispering in its ears the mantra that released their karma. And he saw the binds of karma untied and the souls go off to freedom, right? And so he's saying, but what is Benares to me? What do I care about that? I carry my Benares in the name of my mother. So wherever I die is Benares, because I have become the purity of Benares by chanting that name, by trusting in that grace, and by filling myself with that love. So if in that last, oops, so if in that last breath, my life breath leaves me as I repeat the name of Kali, I will attain the realm of Shiva. What does Benares mean to me? Infinite are my mother's glories, right? Infinite. So you have lots to chant, lots to think about. Lots of it to think about. Infinite are my mother's glories. Who can find the end of her virtues? Shiva, beholding their smallest part, lies prostrate at her lotus feet. The singing was over. The two sons of Rajnarayan entered the room and bowed low before the master. In the afternoon, they had sung with their father the glories of the Divine Mother. The master sang again with them. All creation is the sport of my mad mother Kali. The younger brother requested Sri Ramakrishna to sing a certain song about Sri Gauranga. So the master sang, Gaur and Nitai, ye blessed brothers, I have heard how kind you are, and therefore I have come to you. Ramlal entered the room, and the master said to him, Please sing something about the Divine Mother. It is the day of her worship. Ramlal sang, Who is the woman yonder who lights the field of battle? Darker her body gleams even than the darkest storm cloud, and from her teeth there flash the lightning's blinding flames. Disheveled her hair is flying behind as she rushes about, undaunted in this war between the gods and the demons. Laughing her terrible laugh, she slays the fleeing Asuras, and with her dazzling flashes she bears the horror of war. Oof. Powerful divine mother. Mother is not just a flower basket carrying princess. She's a warrior, and it is her that destroys the demons in your life. All of the things that about yourself that you dislike, that you're just struggling to overcome. When they're overcome, it is the divine mother who has killed them for you, right? It's the divine mother that purifies your heart and purifies your mind. And that's why when you sit and chant the mother's name, do your mantra in your practice, one of the things you can do is just sit there and imagine her flying through your heart with that sword, slaying all of the asuras, all of the demons, all of the bad habits, all of the wrong thinking, all of the attachments that you're holding on to that are robbing you of your bliss, right? And so this is the Divine Mother. She's not the standard ideal of a woman that we have in Western culture. She's also the extremely powerful and violent, strong, unrelenting mother of battle, who kills the demon army. Who is this woman dancing over the field of battle? That's the greatest thing. She's dancing. She has no fear that she's going to be conquered. She knows she is unconquerable, right? Who is this woman dancing over the field of battle? Sri Ramakrishna began to dance to the song, so now he himself is dancing with, with this idea going on in his mind. The black bee of my mind is drawn in sheer delight to the blue lotus flower of Mother Shyama's feet. The blue flower of the feet of Kali, Shiva's consort. Tasteless to the bee are the blossoms of desire. My mother's feet are black, and black too is the bee. Black is made one with black. This much of the mystery these mortal eyes behold, then hastily retreat, But Kamalakanta's hopes are answered in the end. He swims in the sea of bliss, unmoved by joy or pain. Right? So the sea of the bliss is what lies here in the shrine of the heart. Right? The knowledge, beyond the knowledge that you are not the mind and that you are not the body. When you're in the silence of the self, you swim in this ocean of bliss, surrounded by bliss, right? Unmoved by the joy and pain that's happening on the other side of body mind, right? You are safe beyond body mind, but you sit there and observe all of the changes of body and mind and see the pains and the joys, but you are soaked in the bliss of the presence. You have found the image of God within yourself, and you sit there free, floating, protected in that ocean of bliss within you. After the music and dancing, Sri Ramakrishna sat on the couch, and the devotees sat on the floor. He said to M, "It is a pity you weren't here in the afternoon. The musical recital of the Chandi was very fine." Some of the devotees went to the temple to salute the image of the Divine Mother. Others sat quietly performing japam on the steps leading to the Ganges. It was about 11 o'clock, the most auspicious time for contemplation of the Divine Mother. All right, so there you have some information. 11 o'clock in the morning, I assume here, is the best time for meditating on the Divine Mother. So now you have to do it for your time change, for your time zone. Calculate. It might be around 11, coming up on midnight, so that'd be a pretty good time. I wonder if that's how it works. If we have to do the time zone, or if it's that time anywhere, it's a relative time relative to the traveling of the day that you're in. And as the day begins to come into noon, that's the best time to think of the Divine Mother, because that's when she's most active, the middle of the day, right? When everybody's awake, moving, creating and breaking karmas. She's dancing on the battlefield at that time. So it's the time to think of her. It is about 11 o'clock, the most auspicious time for contemplation of the Divine Mother. The flood tide was rising in the Ganges, and the lights on its banks were reflected here and there in its dark waters. It's still like that. That, at Bellermont, every night when I was there in March for that month, every night after the evening aritis, when it was getting dark outside, it was twilight outside, I would go and walk the path along the Ganges River there to all the temples, starting at Vivekananda's room, where he used to live on the campus, and then going to Brahmananda's temple, and then going to the Divine Mother's temple, and then going to Vivekananda's temple, and then to the burning grounds where many of the direct disciples were cremated, and sitting there where the mango tree was that Vivekananda used to meditate under, and then to circle around in front of the president's house and walk in front of the temple, the great big temple to Ramakrishna. And at night, after the arati is over, they have the doors to the temple are open, propped open. And so as you walk by, you can see the grand facade of the temple. You can see the doors. You can look through the doors right at the far end of the temple. The statue of Ramakrishna is sitting there in meditation, gleaming in white alabaster, in the dark of the day. Just a beautiful, that whole walk, just a walk of the heart. I used to love it. There was an old Swami, a very old Swami, who had bow legs, could hardly move. And he was one of these ancient Swamis. And he had an atmosphere that just rumbled around him. If you got near him, you could just feel the presence so strongly there. And he used to walk with this cane very slowly because his legs didn't work well at all. And I would purposely, just because he was just so grand as a presence, so amazing, I would just walk behind him silently at the same pace. In my mind, I was practicing being old because I thought there's going to come a day when I can't move any faster than this either. And so I'm going to practice contentment in just moving this fast, not to be in a hurry to go anywhere. And he would walk that way the whole length of all those temples at that slow pace, and he would always be singing, chanting. I don't always know what he was singing. Some of the songs were recognizable, but just like this, and there was a sense of crazy to him. the sense of that divine play, that the world, that he didn't need it to make sense. He didn't work with that kind of mind anymore at all. For him, he was playing and he saw the divine. And I used to just love to walk in his presence and just do that every evening. So I just see these things because you see you see the lights of Dakshineshwar in the distance. You see them flickering where Ramakrishna's temple, to Kali was, where he was the uh, the worshiper there. And you see on the other side of the Ganges all the other lights of the other temples and apartment buildings and whatnot reflecting on the water as you go and do your daily worship. The flood tide was rising in the Ganges, and the lights on its banks were reflected here and there in its dark waters. From outside the shrine, M was looking wistfully at the image. Ramlal came to the temple with a book in his hand containing the rules of worship. He asked M if he wanted to come in. M felt highly favored and entered the shrine. He saw that the Divine Mother was profusely decorated. The room was brilliantly illuminated by a large chandelier that hung from the ceiling. Two candles were burning in front of the image. On the floor were trays full of offerings. Red hibiscus flowers and bell leaves adorned her feet. She wore garlands around her neck. M's eyes fell on the shamara. Suddenly, he remembered that Sri Ramakrishna often fanned the Divine Mother with it. With some hesitation, he asked Ramlal if he might fan the image. The priest gave his permission. M joyously fanned the image. The regular worship had not yet begun. That's a marvelous thing. On the holy days, when Mother is worshipped, if you go to the Holy Mother's shrine at Bellarmont, the entire room, every inch of the wall is covered in flowers. Every inch of the curtains hanging on over the picture are covered in flowers. The floor covered in flowers. The shrine covered in flowers. I mean, the entire room, just flowers, 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 flowers everywhere. And that priest, will be sitting in there doing a worship, and he's been in there all day long worshiping, and you circumambulate Mother's shrine. She's got a portico or a little that circles it, so you just can walk around and see her from all through all the side doors as you go through, and just the scent of the incense and all the flowers and just the devotion that had to go into putting all of those flowers around, and just to sit there and just contemplate. This is where the mother left the planet, here where this temple is. And you contemplate her life, and it all just comes right in front of you. The devotees again entered the master's room. Beni Paul had invited Sri Ramakrishna to visit the Sinti Brahmo Samaj the next day, but had made a mistake in his letter with regard to the date. Master to M. Beni Paul has sent me an invitation, but why has he put the wrong date? M. The date was not written correctly. He wrote the letter carelessly. As Sri Ramakrishna spoke, he was standing in the middle of the room with Babaram by his side. He leaned toward the disciple, touching his body. Suddenly, he went into samadhi. The devotees stood around with their eyes fixed on him. The master's left foot was advanced a little. The shoulder was slightly inclined to one side. His arm rested on Babaram's neck near the ear. After a while, he came down from the ecstatic state. As he stood there, he put one hand to his cheek and appeared to be brooding over something. Brooding over something, then smiling, he addressed the devotees. I saw everything. How far the devotees had advanced, I saw Rakal, him pointing to M, Surendra, Babram, and many others. Hazra, me? Master, yes. Hazra, how many more obstacles? Master, or Hazra, many more obstacles? Master, no. Hazra, what about Narendra? Master, I didn't see him, but I can tell about him. He is a little entangled, but I saw that everyone will succeed. To M, I saw that all are in hiding. The devotees, that's that's why we haven't realized God, the truth of it. We're still hiding. And where are we hiding? In our desires. We're covering our fears and our insecurities by the distraction of desires and goals and duties and whatnot in the day. So we're all hiding. So Mother's having to play hide and seek with us, which is why Ramakrishna uses that metaphor all the time, right? She's trying to coax us out of our hiding places. Ollie, Ollie, income free. Right? I saw that all are in hiding. The devotees listened to these words with great wonder. Ooh. It seemed to them that they were hearing an oracle. Master, but I got into that mood by touching Babarum. Hazra, who is first? What a clown. That's hilarious. Sri Ramakrishna was quiet for a time, and then he said, I wish I had a few like Nitya Gopal. Again, he appeared thoughtful. He remained standing. He said, I wish Adhar Sen's duties would become fewer, but I'm afraid the English officer will scold him. He may say, what is all this nonsense? Sri Ramakrishna sat on the small couch and the devotees on the floor. Babaram and Kishori came quickly to the master and began to stroke his feet gently. Master to Kishori, what's the matter? Why so much service today? Ramlal entered the room and saluted Sri Ramakrishna, touching the ground with his forehead. Then, with great respect, he touched the master's feet. He was ready to worship the Divine Mother in the temple. All right, we'll stop there today.